Hello and welcome to the Game Theory Podcast. I'm your host, Sam Vecenie, coming to you live from my hotel room in Chicago. We're going to talk about a crazy, hectic end of the NBA regular season, especially in the Western Conference. And then we are going to break down the four NBA playoff matchups that we know: Wolves, Lakers, Clippers, Nuggets, Pistons, Knicks, and Pacers, Bucks. But first, let's hit the music.
They do have a timeout. Decide not to use it. Way downtown.
Bang! Bang! What's this gonna be? Wow! Are you kidding me?
Hello and welcome to the Game Theory Podcast. I'm your host, Sam Vecenie. But if you watch the tape, what you will see completely orchestrated this game. Bryce, what's going on, buddy?
What's up, Sam? How are you doing? We are playoff basketball. NBA playoff basketball is here. This year's hitting a little different for me because I actually get to cover it for the team that I spend the most time on, right? Like as an NBA fan, I get to watch it every year, but is hitting a little bit different this season. So I'm excited for that, but we've made it through the regular season. We have the matchups. We're going to break it all down. We can get into awards, later in the week, all of that. I'm excited for this time of year. It's good to be at this spot in the season.
So as Bryce just mentioned, there was only one episode last week. This week, you're getting at least 3 episodes over the course of the next 3 days. So hit the subscribe button over on the YouTube channel. Hit the subscribe button over on the podcast feed. Please, by all means, it really helps support the show for sure. But beyond that, you're going to get a lot of really great content this week. So the way that we're going to break this out, we're going to do tonight's episode, kind of breaking down some playoff matchups, breaking down what happened at the end of the regular season here. Tomorrow, we're going to release our, quote unquote, other awards podcast. So defensive player of the year, all defense team, most improved player, rookie of the year, all rookie team. All that's going to go into one show. Then the next day, so Tuesday night going into Wednesday, we're going to do MVP and all NBA as one episode. And we're going to break it all down and we're going to have a lot of fun talking through all of these things. The reason why this has been crazy, I'm in Chicago. I'm flying to Los Angeles on Tuesday. I was in Portland up until Saturday. I was at Hoop Summit practices. It's just been crazy. Maybe at the end of the episode here, we'll talk a little bit about what I saw at Hoop Summit practices too, because I thought that was really, really fun to be at and break down. Okay. But first, let's get into what happened at the end of the regular season here. So today there were, seemingly an incalculable number of permutations. They were absolutely calculable. My good friend and colleague, John Hollinger, calculated all of them for me and explained them. But seemingly there were an insane number of things going on over the course of this week. And really, it spilled into today. So the Lakers were set at 3. The Rockets were set at 2. Obviously, the Thunder have been set at 1 now almost for 2 months, it feels like. But especially for, I think it's like realistically about 3 or 4 weeks now is when, maybe a month ago is when it became totally set in stone. The Nuggets, Clippers, Wolves, Warriors, and to some extent the Grizzlies were all kind of locked into a crazy little battle here where, depending on what happened, we could have ended up with something crazy. I think the Grizzlies actually were locked out at this point, unless the Wolves lost maybe. But the Wolves were playing Utah, so that was very unlikely to happen. I'm going to talk a lot about the Clippers-Warriors game, so I'm going to save that for last and kind of run through what just happened in the rest of the games here, where it was crazy from that 12:30 to 3 o'clock Central Time window here. So Minnesota plays Utah. Minnesota wins 116-105. Utah gave them a pretty real scrap. This is a 1-point game at halftime. Even going in, I would say to the third quarter, it wasn't totally dead necessarily, but it was probably a 10 to 12 point game, something like that. And if the Jazz had gotten hot, you never know what would have happened. this was just all about Ant. Ant went crazy. He drilled 7 threes, completely took over the game for long swaths of it. He had 43 points. I don't think there's a ton to talk about with this one. I've enjoyed watching this kind of young Jazz team scratch and claw a little bit late, but I don't have a ton to say here necessarily about this game. It was totally just an Anthony Edwards explosion. And then Dante has continued like a really strong run here in the second half of the season that I think is worth noting. He drilled 4 threes in this game, and I thought it was pretty important to see him continue to get hot from 3 and go 4 for 8 in this game. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, yeah, it looked like Julius didn't have as big of a game, but I feel like he's been playing well since returning. So, I know we'll talk about like matchups and stuff, but that's one that's kind of been interesting to track with Julius Randle. But
Memphis beats the Mavericks by about $1 billion because they kind of completely ran away with it in the third quarter. The Grizzlies didn't play any of their guys. Bryce, do you know what this game was?
I'm guessing this is a Cam Spencer game. I actually hadn't looked at the box score yet. Was this a Cam Spencer game?
It was a Cam Spencer special. Is what happened here. He goes 8 for 19, has 23 points, 7 assists versus 0 turnovers, plus 18 in the game. Was terrific. Lamar Stevens had 31. I mean, he just completely overpowered.
I mean, now that I look at the box score, it's a Marvin Bagley the third game with the double-double, 25 and 12.
Totally. It was a ridiculous game. It was a completely absurd game. Look, they sat everybody. The Mavericks also sat everybody because they were locked into the play-in at that point. So, this is where we landed. One more game here worth noting. Denver beats Houston 126-111. Denver has just a massive first quarter where they go up double digits. Houston basically played their guys up to a certain point and then kind of called it pretty quickly in the second half, it felt like to me, which is completely reasonable. I don't blame them at all for that. They had nothing to play for. I was honestly a little bit surprised that they played the guys that they played. Maybe it was a circumstance where they were kind of trying to, mess with playoff seeding in some way, shape, or form in order to get the matchup they wanted, but they didn't want to go all in on that necessarily. That's kind of my read on it, where if you could get your guys some rest, you don't want to run them for 35 minutes into the ground, but you also want to try and make it work. The guys here in this game, Jokic goes for 18, 7 and 7 in 31 minutes, felt like he just dictated whatever he wanted on the court. Russ's athleticism, I thought played pretty well in this game against Houston, which isn't really a super surprise, I guess. And then Aaron Gordon, was just terrific. I felt like he had 18 points, 7 rebounds, kind of moved all over the court pretty effectively and, did the job that he always does defensively. So yeah, nothing crazy here. The Nuggets, that clinched them into the number 4 seed with that victory. That's the key and why we're talking about this. So the Nuggets end up at the 4 seed. That left a Clippers Warriors showdown. And I would argue, I think, and you can tell me how you feel about this. Out of all of the teams that we've talked about here, so from Memphis to Minnesota to Denver to these 2 teams, I think that these 2 teams, the Warriors and the Clippers, are the ones that have played the best recently over the course of the back part of the season.
Yeah, I mean, ever since the Jimmy Butler trade, obviously they didn't get it done today, but that team has been really good. And I've kind of been sneaky trying to drop, Los Angeles Clippers things all season long if they were ever to be healthy, which I know is a fair question. But James Harden, while not always super efficient, has put together one of those big time creation. God, he played 48 minutes today.
He was awesome. He was so good, Bryce.
Kawhi played 47. We're going to talk about Ivica Zubac a lot over the next couple of days. I feel like Norm Powell hasn't even quite got back into his rhythm since he came back from his injury. We've talked Chris Dunn. Obviously, they didn't go to the bench a whole lot, but that starting 5, it feels like they've locked in on it. They know what it is. And then for Golden State, obviously the Jimmy Butler, they've locked into a starting 5, I feel like, Sam, with Pods playing much, much better than what we talked about at the start of the season. So I would agree. These are 2 teams that I don't know if I want to call them dangerous, but are at least very interesting. And the result of this game knocking one of them to a play-in situation is kind of fascinating.
I think that that's absolutely dead on. So what this became was essentially a battle for the 5 seed or the 7 seed. And it was one of the best regular season games of the season. I felt like, just truly in terms of the back and forth and also the schematics that each team employed, right? Because the Clippers obviously just utilized Ivica Zubac, who, a guy that is certainly going to be on our all defense teams. I don't think we're, breaking news there, to sag off of either Draymond Green or Gary Payton II, whoever he was able to guard. And it really clogged up the paint, and it forced the Warriors to be much more of a perimeter oriented team. It felt like, especially when Jimmy Butler wasn't, Jimmy was on the court for the most part, but like when Jimmy wasn't on the ball and trying to create, it felt like the Warriors were a perimeter oriented team. And the Clippers end up winning this game 124-119 in overtime. This game did go to overtime, but I will just kind of say, I felt like the Clippers are the ones that dictated their will on the Warriors a little bit more than the Warriors were able to on the Clippers. And the reason that this game ended up being so close was the Clippers, I felt like, didn't have an amazing matchup for Jimmy Butler when Jimmy got into switches and was able to kind of attack the guys that he specifically wanted to attack, especially in the bench units. Like that little second quarter, late first quarter run that the Warriors went on that I think was like a 17-1 run. It felt like they were really able to just attack Bogdan Bogdanović, for instance, like pretty regularly. And also, like, it felt like Jimmy attacked Norman Powell a little bit as well and was able to get to his spots against him. So that's something to track a little bit moving forward. The other piece of this, though, was just Steph Curry going crazy. Steph goes for 7 threes in this game. He has 36. He was fantastic, but he was a little bit careless with the ball. He had the 8 turnovers. The other big thing here is that this was a game where Draymond Green drilled 4 of his 6 threes, right? And that's just not always going to happen. It's just not. Like, I'm sorry. We can kind of just admit that this is a thing that is reality for the Warriors. When teams sag off of Draymond Green, he's not going to drill 4 threes every game. So I think this was a game that was more heartening for the Clippers than it was in any way disappointing for me for the Warriors. A couple of random things on the Warriors here, just like in a must-win game where they had to win to make the playoffs. Jonathan Kuminga was out of the rotation in favor of Guy Santos didn't play, but Guy Santos did go to the scorers table at one point ahead of Kuminga, which makes me wonder if even he is ahead of Kuminga in the rotation.
Wait, that's truly a DNP coach's decision? Like, there was no...
Truly, as far as I know, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, he was in uniform at least. Bob Myers was talking about during the game that it felt like, he was supposed to play. Buddy Hield, Gary Payton II, Kevon Looney, those were the guys that they went with in that game. And again, Guy Santos went to the scorers table at one point ahead of Kuminga. And look, Kuminga has not been a great fit with the Jimmy Warriors. This is not a surprise, and it's not something that's unexpected. I do think that we're setting up now for this offseason where he's a restricted free agent with Jimmy here. Unless he has a monster playoffs in some way, probably a departure from Kuminga. I think that probably makes sense to me at this point, to try and do a sign and trade for somebody to, maybe take a flyer on Kuminga, see what they can go get. But I did find it at least noteworthy and notable that
absolutely.
They just seem to be a little bit more trusting in other players right now. The big key for this game for the Clippers for me is that their big 3 in Leonard, Harden, and Zubac, and I think Zubac quickly is becoming a very real part of a big 3 in this situation, were better than the Warriors' big 3. Kawhi Leonard goes for 33 points, 7 assists, 6 rebounds. James Harden goes for 39, 7, and 10 assists. He got stripped a couple of times by Moses Moody at the top, but I thought he was generally pretty careful with the ball in this game. And the big mismatch problem I truly felt like was Zubats. And this is where playing Gary Payton, I think, came back and like hindered them in some way, shape, or form, because Gary Payton was just totally sagged off in this game. And yes, he played really, strong, aggressive defense. But at the same token, Zubats just completely shut down the interior against the Warriors. He was awesome on defense in this game. There's just like not another way to put it. Like Podziemski would try and drive in and there was nothing. Like guys would try and drive in and they just kick out automatically. He's just enormous. He knows how to use his size and length. To me, he's just like very reminiscent of like almost like the way that Brook Lopez protects the rim more than anybody, because he just uses like the width and breadth of his shoulders in order to like take up as much of the lane as humanly possible.
I mean, this is playoff basketball though, right? Even for me at times, I have a feeling I'm going to get a rude awakening. We'll talk more about this later, but maybe you can play with 2 non-shooters in the NBA, right? Like you can kind of figure it out because you watch it work in the regular season where the scouting reports and the schemes and all of that's just not as intense. And then you get reminded, even in a regular season game, one that carries this much weight that it did, and you realize a 33% on 1.5 attempts per game, Gary Payton II, as much as I love what he is able to do at his size in this league, can quickly become a real liability on the offensive end when the other team is willing to defend him and have the defender, like if it's Zubats, and just execute it that way. You realize how quickly people like that can be played off the floor in the playoffs.
Yeah, no, that's definitely right. And it's going to be a critical thing because it really felt like the Warriors at large times of this game were playing like 3-on-5 offensively, maybe like 3.5, because Draymond is such a quick decision maker and quick ball mover. Plus he made his shots today. But like when Draymond isn't going, like it is going to really feel like the floor is crunched for them. And that's something maybe we'll talk about in the play-in game. It's something we'll talk about maybe later this week when we do more playoff previews. I'm realizing we're probably going to have to record another episode this week now, doing the other 4 series playoff previews. It is really interesting, though, to see how the Clippers were able to condense the court in a real way. And on top of it, I also thought that the Warriors probably made some calculated errors defensively in strategy, particularly near the end of the game. They started to send these like kind of weak doubles toward Kawhi to get the ball out of his hands in order to like force, somebody like Chris Dunn to make a decision. The problem with that is it's actually kind of similar to the Warriors when, Gary Payton's on the court. Chris Dunn, much like Gary Payton II, grew up playing point guard. So when you get him into the middle of the court, he just knows what decision to make. Like it's actually like a pretty easy calculation for him. So like the problem for Chris Dunn, why he didn't necessarily work as like a top 5 pick, was that his handle was too high and he couldn't get to the middle of the court regularly. You get him to the middle of the court because your guy comes and sends a weak double. He's going to be able to make that pass, I think, relatively easily. So I didn't love that just decision from the Warriors in this game to send these kind of late doubles toward Kawhi to get the ball out of his hands. It just didn't feel like it worked for me as a strategy. And I'll be interested to see how the Warriors kind of play aggressively defensively throughout the playoffs, if only because it does feel somewhat tricky for them with just the size mismatches that they present kind of across the board.
The only other thing I just kind of to take note of as I was looking through the box score here is it is an overtime game where Jimmy plays 48, Steph and Dre play 38, Pods plays 43, and they do play again on Tuesday. It's not a back-to-back, obviously, but Memphis has been rested because they didn't play their guys today. So does Memphis have a little bit more juice for Jaren Jackson Jr., for John Morant, for Des Bane? Or does it not show up at all? Maybe it won't matter, but we are talking 3 guys in particular with the big 3 with Golden State that are a little bit older. I assume they'll be ready to go, but it'll just be interesting to see as they played a very, intense playoff caliber overtime game, one day off, and then they're right back to it. They've done it long enough. I assume they'll be able to, but just interesting.
Yeah, totally agree. This Clippers team is dangerous to me. Maybe we'll talk about that a little bit more when we get to the playoff matchup previews that we're going to talk about. But I think the Clippers look great right now. You look at like kind of the way they've played down the stretch here. I think they've won like 8 or 9 in a row at this point, and some of these wins like haven't been against cupcakes. They beat the Knicks, obviously. They lost a really tight game on the road to the Cavs, and that's their last loss. They lost a really tight game at home to the Thunder by 2. That's their second to last loss. And then if you go back and you just look through what they've done basically since, what would that be, like the start of March almost, it feels like. This was a team that was sitting right at 30 or 32-29 on March 4th. And now we're sitting here and they're 49-32. They've won 16 of their last 19 games, and they just look like a total monster. And look, I get it. Anybody that doesn't want to bet on like Kawhi Leonard's health through a playoff run, I'm not going to sit here and fight with you on that. If that's just what your belief system is, I get it. And I just like can't really argue with you necessarily, given that we haven't seen it in recent memory. But when he's healthy and they have Harden rolling like this, and they have all of these monster defenders like Dunn and Ivica Zubac and Derek Jones Jr. and just all these bodies to throw at you, they are a bitch to deal with.
I like this team. Like I said, I've been interested all year. When PG left, it was like, okay, what are they going to do? They kind of made some like, Chris Dunn for that contract. I mean, it was obviously nothing, but like bring in Chris Dunn, you bring in Derek Jones Jr. Like, okay, you're just going to do it with like kind of a few different pieces. And James Harden's turned back the clock a little bit. Like the thing here is Kawhi, right? Can Kawhi be healthy? But with Zubac making the improvement and the growth he did this year, it gives him something else. And Norm Powell as well, with how good he's been. I know it hasn't been as good since he returned, but he's been pretty high level. I feel like they settled in on their rotation, and I think they at least have options off the bench. You brought up Bogdanovic and the issues potentially defensively, but if you can survive those issues defensively, he can give you some real versatility offensively as not just a shooter, but also a guy that can do some things off the bounce if you need that as well in some non-Harden minutes. So it's along with Derek Jones Jr., et cetera. So I think they're a really interesting team.
I think that they're also a really interesting team here moving forward. And this is a team that I don't know if they're the most dangerous team to the Thunder. They're definitely in my top 3 though. Right now, I would say they're in my top 3 if you made me pick between them, the Lakers, and really it's them and the Lakers. I think right now that are the 2 most dangerous teams if you made me pick.
Yeah, I mean, post All-Star break, they're top 4 in net rating. They've been really good. They're 4th in offensive rating and 7th in defensive rating. It's a really good basketball team.
Yep. Okay. Let's go on ahead and hit an ad break real quick. We're going to shout out our good friends over at PrizePicks. PrizePicks is the absolute best place to get real money sports action. With over 10 million members and billions of dollars in awarded winnings, PrizePicks has made daily fantasy sports accessible to all. Look, we've been doing these picks here at Game Theory. We're absolutely going to do some for the play-in games that are coming up. We'll do the Hawks and Magic game here first, where I don't know how you feel about Paolo Banchero in the playoffs, but I feel quite good about Paolo Banchero in the playoffs. He has been dominant recently. He has destroyed teams, it feels like, every single time that he gets an opportunity to do so. And he has real playoff track record at this point to me after that series last year against the Cavs. You can take over 29.5 points. I'm going to take Zach Ricochet to go over 7.5 in this one. I know he's been a little bit cold to finish the season, but I think he probably gets over 7.5. He's moved without the ball exceedingly well. And we're going to go Franz Wagner to go under 25. I think we're going to get a better Franz Wagner than what we've seen recently in the playoffs from him against the Cavs. But I do think 25 is a pretty aggressive number personally for Franz, given how much I assume that Paulo is going to dominate the ball in that game because he's kind of earned the right to do so. On that selection, you can get what I believe is 3.5 to 1. That's terrific, terrific number. 3.5 to 1 for those picks. Go over to PrizePicks. It's the best place to cash in on your favorite sports. You can combine basketball with baseball, hockey, whatever you want to do. If you think that Ja Morant's going to go crazy, we'll talk about that game later this week. If you think that in the playoffs, LeBron's going to go nuts, you can do that. You and your friends can run your game over on PrizePicks every day this year during the playoffs. Download the app today. And if you're going to take that pick, use the code Game Theory to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Download the app today and use the code Game Theory to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. PrizePicks, run your game. Second sponsor here today, MITOPURE over at Timeline. I'm feeling stronger from my workouts, and most importantly, I'm feeling like I have the energy and can recover quicker from my workouts thanks to MITOPURE. I've been over in the United States. I don't tend to sleep well when I'm out of the country, so it's a little bit harder to get up and go work out. But MITOPURE is a precise dose of the rare postbiotic urolithin A. It works by promoting an essential cellular cleanup process that clears out dysfunctional mitochondria, and those are your cell's battery packs. And if you need battery packs like I do when I'm on the road, this is helpful. MITOPURE is the only urolithin A supplement on the market clinically proven to target the effects of age-related cellular decline. Awaken the strength, power, and resilience already in you with the first and only supplement clinically proven to rejuvenate health at the cellular level. Timeline is offering 10% off your order of MITOPURE today. Go to timeline.com/game theory. That's timeline.com/game theory for 10% off your order of MITOPURE. Okay, Bryce, before we get into these playoff matchups specifically, I do want to just quickly talk about the play-in and what we're going to see there this week. So on Tuesday, as you mentioned, we have Atlanta, Orlando, and we have Memphis, Golden State. Those are the 7-8 games. Atlanta is going to be 7:30 Eastern time. Memphis and Golden State is going to be at 10 o'clock Eastern time. Do you have any lean there? I don't want to spend too much time on this just because these are toss-up, one-off games, it feels like to me. But I would imagine that you're probably with me in thinking this is Orlando and Atlanta end up with the 7 seeds, right?
Orlando and who? And Golden State?
Orlando and Golden State, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I'm definitely Golden State. I'm a little interested in Atlanta just because they do have Trae Young. We've talked about the wings. Obviously, it's not the full healthy wing group that we get really excited about because Jalen Johnson's still not playing. They've settled into a Kongwu at the big man spot. I do think I will lean Orlando, but if you hey, you have to pick an upset in this one, I think it would be Atlanta, not Memphis.
Look, Atlanta just has these games where they seem to spike fire from 3.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah.
Like, it does happen. This is a team that they take middle of the pack in threes. Like, it's not crazy or anything. But when they get hot, it just feels like they really, really get smoldering. Obviously, Trae Young is somebody that can get, kind of nuclear hot. But, like, even guys like Karras and Ricochet particularly, and plus they have Niang now. Like, it does feel like this is a team that they're going to have that happen against Orlando because we know that Orlando is a team that is going to protect the rim. They're going to be big. They're going to be physical against you defensively. I do like Orlando in this game. I would expect Paulo will be the best player on the court, and I would expect that their defense is going to be able to kind of stem the tide against what Atlanta is going to do. But you kind of just don't know with shooting variance, I guess, on any given night.
Atlanta seems like a team that in a one-off game could definitely do some damage, right? Like if it was a 7-game series, we'd be talking a little bit different. Like, can they sustain it throughout the whole thing? But in a one-off, okay, Orlando's not going to score a ton of points because that's not what they do, but can you make enough threes to beat them? And I'm not saying like they're going to go score 130 because Orlando, I have too much respect for their defense to say that, but can you make enough threes to score enough points to go ahead and knock them off? So they would be the team that I would guess. Again, if you force me to pick an upset, it would be that one more so than what I think Golden State is going up against Memphis.
I think that is probably where I'm at as well. In the 9-10, we've got Miami, Chicago, and Dallas, Sacramento. I think that I actually like it's hard because Miami is a team that has not played crazy well, and Chicago obviously has played pretty well here down the stretch. It's what got them into this position. I still just kind of trust Miami in a like 1-game playoff as opposed to this Chicago team. I think that Spoelstra is going to be able to like throw some kind of junky defenses at Chicago and try to slow the game down, particularly. I feel like I can't get there with the Chicago team, even acknowledging that Miami is not what I would call a good team right now.
I'm with you. Like, I want to pick Chicago. Like, I feel like Miami's going to win. And I kind of want to pick Chicago just as like a fun pick because Kobe White's been fun. Giddey's been putting up big numbers. Modest has done some nice things. And then my Tyler Hero's been incredible this year, Sam, on the offensive end. They'd still have Bam Adebayo, and I think where I would lean Miami if I really had to make a selection with my head, not my heart, or like not my heart, but just like the fun pick is Spoelstra, right? Like I just believe Spo is going to be able to put together, at least when he has a couple days to prepare, they don't play till Wednesday, at least to win that game, I got to feel like they're going to be able to figure it out.
I think I'm with that for what it's worth. And then if you had to pick between Miami and Atlanta, and then let's say Memphis and look, I picked Dallas in that game against Sacramento. It just feels like so much of what Sacramento is doing right now is kind of based on like Sabonis at this point. I feel like Anthony Davis is like a really tough matchup there at the end of the day. It's going to be really difficult. It feels like for them to be able to really get what they want to do. With
and they're all healthy now too, right? I mean, other than Kyrie, of course, but AD's back, Lively's good to go, Gafford's going to be good to go, PJ's going to be good to go, right? So I would probably go Dallas. I think they have enough perimeter to get you through a play-in game or two-ish. I don't think they can get through a playoff series with the perimeter creation that they have right now. Here, like, I just watched Sacramento play incredible the other night, so maybe I'm a little bit biased because Levine and DeRozan and Sabonis just torched the Pistons and went crazy. Yeah. So I'm struggling a little bit, but I think I will go. I think I would go Dallas there for that one as well. So then whenever you get into the I would take Atlanta over Miami in that one. Like I believe in Atlanta a little bit in terms of getting into the playoffs. I'm not saying they're going to like go challenge the Cavs or something like that. Then we would have what? Memphis and Dallas.
That's right. I mean, I will just say like on Sacramento, they're just a total like trick or treat team right now. Right. Like they obviously played well against the Clippers and Nuggets, and they have that great win against the Pistons. The best win they have recently, like in the last couple of weeks, is they beat like a full strength Cavs team on the road. Like they played really effectively in that game, but then you look like right before that and they lost to the Wizards and they lost by 30 to the Magic. Like they lost by 12 to the Bulls. And it's just, I don't know how you trust this team totally, I guess. Maybe I'm being, a little bit of a hater in some respect on this. Like even their game, like against Phoenix, like today, I watched like a very small amount of it. This was a game where the Suns started like Ryan Dunn, Mason Plumlee, Tyus Jones, Grayson Allen, Colin Gillespie. And I don't know, it just felt like pulling teeth in the first half, like for a real like stretch there. I might. The more I think about it, the more I might take Sacramento here, but I do think that Dallas at least has the defensive bodies to make this a little bit of a more difficult game for Sacramento than maybe what they hope. And if Sacramento's like shot making between Levine and DeRozan just like isn't falling, they are a really difficult team to really trust in and rely on.
So that was what happened in that Detroit game. Detroit actually jumped out up on them, and then DeRozan just went bananas. And then when DeRozan set, Levine went bananas, and Sabonis even had a triple-double. I think part of this for me as well, I want to see Dallas OKC in the first round. And it's not because I think Dallas is going to beat OKC. I want to see the OKC front line. Like, I think that would be for a first-round series against a – I don't know. Can we call the Thunder's regular season historical? Like the net rating is historical, right? Like that's not hyperbole. An incredible regular season from the Thunder to get them against a front line of PJ Washington, AD, Gafford, Lively, I think would be a lot of fun. Now they're not going to be able to guard Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. They're not going to be able to break down the Thunder's defense on the perimeter. I get all of that. Like I understand. I just think I would like to see that front court. If you're going to give me a Thunder first round series that I may tune in for, it would be to see the front court matchup of Chet and Hart versus AD, Gafford, Lively.
Yeah, I think the Thunder beat the ever-loving shit out of whoever they play in the first round.
No, for sure.
Unless it's the Warriors. Like if the Grizzlies beat the Warriors somehow, and the Warriors have to play Oklahoma City, like there are some things that the Warriors can do that would cause problems. But yeah, I mean, if it's any of these other three teams, like I think it's a real.
And one other thing with the Kings, Malik Monk went out in that Pistons game, and I'm looking at. I don't think he's going to be available for these play-in games. April 9th, it said strained calf injury in 2 weeks.
Yeah, it'd be very unlikely that Malik's going to be able to play in this.
And the other thing,
especially in this play-in stuff,
Jake LaRavia has been a rotation piece for them since the trade deadline, and he's been out with a thumb. So like their depth is a little bit in regards to what Monk does offensively. LaRavia gets him a little more of a well-rounded wing option. So that could play into these games as well, even though I know the rotation shrinks, Sam, but those are two guys that I think would be in the rotation. And instead you're relying on a guy we love, but, Devin Carter now as a rookie is being asked to play, in some big moments and big minutes.
Yeah, I think that's basically right. We haven't talked a lot about Memphis recently, like since they fired Taylor Jenkins. Look, I think they've like somewhat righted the ship against like some fairly bad teams, right? Like they obviously beat the Pistons as well recently. That was a game where, if I remember correctly, Cade played too, right?
I just was pulling the notes. He did. They were a little bit beat up because Schroeder started, Tobias was still out, and no Jalen Duren in that game. So the Pistons starting lineup, and so that means you would have got Paul Reed minutes, but there was no Ja for the Grizzlies. So they went Pippen Jr., Bane, Jalen Wells was still playing at that time. Desmond Bane looked real good in that game.
Yeah. The thing that's kind of happened with Isalo since he's been there is it feels like when Ja and Jaren like haven't found that synergy. Really almost at like any point this year, it feels like they haven't had that like synergy when they're playing together.
I would agree.
But especially since Isalo got there, it feels like Jaren is like a little bit more neutered within that offense. In the game against the Pistons, if I remember correctly, like Jaren played pretty well in that game.
He did.
And like really, was a mismatch hunting four that we've seen throughout the course of the year.
Yep.
But in the games where Ja plays, it feels like they go so ball screen heavy, like all the time, which is fine. Like, that's what seemingly they wanted to do when they fired Taylor and wanted to go with Isalo. But the key for the Grizzlies is getting those guys going at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And we just haven't seen that yet in a way that totally works for me. And plus, like, look, no secret that their defense is like completely fallen off of a cliff over the back half of the season. Realistically, they obviously beat the Mavericks today to get out to 48-34. but like the Timberwolves game was like a total catastrophe on what was that, Wednesday or Thursday defensively. Like they just got absolutely obliterated on defense. It was really, really tough. The Warriors game in the later portion of the season as well, I felt like was really, really rough. And then the Nuggets game, look, that was a back-to-back, if I remember correctly, on the Friday. And it did just feel like they kind of got wherever they wanted there too. So it's hard to have a lot of faith in the Grizzlies right now. I do think I have faith in them to beat either of these two teams. I think I would pick them to beat either of these two teams, but I don't know if I have faith in them is maybe the way to put it.
Yeah, Jaren, that team is going to be interesting because you're right. We gave him, a lot of the season, it seemed like he was the number one option there. And that offense kind of fit what he did in terms of he could attack closeouts and he could move and then he could cut.
Yeah.
And then like straight going ball screen. He's a pick and pop guy. Like he can do that and attack a closeout that way, but it just doesn't seem like that's as much as his thing. And I just don't know that they're going to get that chemistry figured out by playoffs time, even if they do make it out of the play-in. Obviously, the scary injury to Jalen Wells also has to be discussed here. Hopefully he's doing, I know he's doing okay, like he's been, but super scary situation.
Anytime you get undercut like that, it's scary.
Yeah. But we talked all year that one of my questions about the Grizzlies was who takes the perimeter defensive matchups? When Jalen Wells has done it all year, can you count on a rookie to doing it? Well, I'd rather count on the rookie that's done it all year to do it than somebody else now having to do it.
So I will say, like,
Vince Williams is back now.
That's who it's going to be. It's going to be Vince.
But he's not going to play 48 minutes. So when Wells was healthy, you had those two guys between the two of them. Now when Vince plays 36, who does it for the other 12?
Well, in the injury that like nobody talks about, it feels like in the NBA sphere that is so unbelievably critical to what the Grizzlies want to do is as soon as they lost Brandon Clark for the season.
That's right. Yeah.
It just really, really felt like they didn't have the ability to go small in the way they want to go small with high leverage defenders out there at every spot. Like to go small, you basically have to put like Santi and Jaren at the 4 or 5. And it just doesn't work as well as Brandon and Jaren. Like Brandon and Jaren have that incredible synergy together that really allows them to play effective basketball. And now obviously they're going a little bit bigger with Edie as well. And, in the Minnesota game, Edie got like just, that was the less said about that, the better. But like, it just really felt like to me that loss, that Brandon Clark injury is so crippling that it's going to be really, really difficult for them to find the matchups they want.
Yeah, it's a very versatile piece for them, and it's gone again. Like this was a team with a lot of those options, a lot of versatility. Even I'll mention Jake LaRavia again was another one of those pieces, another one of those defenders. They made their decision. I'm not like, but you lose him, you lose Wells, you lose Clark, and now all of a sudden it seems, and the other thing is now you're locked back into this offense now that's Ja Morant centered for better or worse, that is ball screen centric for better or for worse. And I feel like even if he has a great playoffs, I wonder what that's going to mean for Jaren offensively, maybe even what it means for Bane offensively. And then you don't have the lineup and the defensive versatility that you had at one point through not necessarily any fault of their own. So I have a hard time being super confident in them, even though I could absolutely, if they beat Golden State, I wouldn't be shocked, but I could definitely see them winning the second game against either Dallas or Sacramento.
Okay. Where we're going to go now, we're going to start with the playoff series. And I think the playoff series that I'm most interested in, and I know the Clippers Nuggets is really like fascinating for a number of reasons, but the one I'm actually most interested in is Minnesota and the Lakers.
Okay.
And the reason for that is I feel like both of those teams cause each other some pretty real problems in some way, shape, or form, where like the Lakers don't have a great guy to guard Anthony Edwards to me. They also don't have a ton of size on the interior, and now they're playing this team in Minnesota that can like load up and really try and attack the glass and get second chances and play the possession game, right? But then on the other side, you have this Lakers team that is really well built to play like an aggressive style of defense that can potentially neuter Anthony Edwards in some way, shape, or form by just taking the ball out of his hands and forcing other guys on Minnesota to beat them. And then also potentially on offense, playing Rudy Gobert off of the court and thus mitigating the size advantage that they have that way. Where do you kind of fall on where all of this is going to go within this series?
I think the first thing that my mind goes to is what you mentioned a little bit towards the end, which is LA taking the ball out of Anthony Edwards' hands. Like, to me, that is fascinating. And this kind of plays into the defense that JJ went to at one point, right? Which was, we're going to scramble. We're going to run around. We're going to take anybody that we don't believe is a volume good 3-point shooter, and we're going to let that guy shoot. Now, you have to identify those guys on Minnesota. Who are those guys? Because you know what Minnesota is, Sam? A really good 3-point shooting team. They are top 4 in the NBA in percentage. They are 6th in 3-point attempt rate. So is it going to be Julius Randle? Are you going to say, hey, we're going to let him shoot threes? Is it Jaden McDaniels, who I think has been a little bit disappointing on the offensive end this year? But the other thing is, like, if you're going to let Julius catch, I think Julius is at his best whenever he gets to make decisions and be aggressive and attack out of that. Now, Ant has to make those decisions as well when he gets to put on him. I wonder if Minnesota would be okay, and then they could go small. They could take Rudy off the floor. You know who's coming on the court now? Naz Reid, who can also shoot and finish those plays. So I think that'll be interesting. And then I wonder if Minnesota, how do you feel about their perimeter matchups in terms of, Jaden McDaniels being able to take the Luka matchup, Anthony Edwards being able to take the Austin Reeves matchup, Na being able to come in and take, but then who do you put Conley on whenever he's on the floor with because this is the thing you mentioned with the Lakers. They are small at center, but they are big across the board. So if you want to play somebody small, it's going to be tough for you to find the right matchup for that player.
I think that it basically has to be Conley on Finney-Smith when he's on the court. But this does not feel like a series for Mike Conley to me. This feels like much more of a series for all of the other, Timberwolves players and shooters.
DiVincenzo. Yep.
Right. And particularly what stands out to me in terms of that 3-point shooting, right? If you go since February 1st, right? So the Wolves have obviously been incredibly hot this year. They've played, really, really high level basketball. But if you look since February 1st, it feels like their shooters have been, quite hot from 3, where like Julius Randle is drilling 40% from 3 in that time. Dante DiVincenzo's at 45% from 3 in that time. Nikhil Alexander Walker is at his normal 35. And then Mike Conley is hitting at 45. And oh, by the way, like Jalen Clark will come in and he'll hit 44% of his like occasional threes that he puts up, right? So the shooting is kind of the key to me here. Can they just consistently knock down shots? If you're going to put 2 on the ball against Anthony Edwards, when you get the open shot, when Los Angeles is scrambling and closing out on you, can you make the 3? This is a team that consistently over the course of the last 2 months has made the threes, right? 2.5 months. Like, they've knocked down those shots, and it's a big reason why they've been successful. Now, the defensive end for Minnesota is interesting for me, because to me, the Lakers are the exact kind of team that neutralizes what Minnesota wants to do defensively, because they're going to play smaller. They're going to have, I would guess, Rudy have to guard Rui.
Yeah.
And Rui has become like a very real 3-point shooter, as we've talked about throughout the course of the year. He's hitting 41% of his threes. Dorian Finney-Smith is hitting 40% of his threes with the Lakers. And then you obviously have LeBron, Luka, and Austin Reeves, and all those dudes are just absolutely flaming from 3 as well. So it's going to be hard, I think, at times to keep Rudy on the court unless one of those guys, particularly Rui or Dorian Finney-Smith, does not get hot from three or just goes like ice cold from three in some way, shape, or form. Now, the matchup that is interesting is like Gabe Vincent has played obviously like a huge role for the Lakers down the stretch. I would imagine that's probably the matchup that the Timberwolves want Rudy on from time to time. And I do think that like having Gabe Vincent as a body to be able to throw at Anthony Edwards, not all the time because he has like a real size disadvantage, but some of the time will be valuable for them. But I feel like the way that the Lakers match up with Ant is simply trying to get the ball out of his hands by blitzing ball screens and blitzing him. And that almost like negates the need for a single player to match up with him because he's kind of alone as a creator on this team. And then on the other side of the court, you have three creators in Luka, LeBron, and Reeves to where you're able to kind of mix and match, and whoever has the easier matchup, that's where you can attack. You asked me, and this is where you left it, and I kind of filibustered and rambled for a minute, who the matchups are for Minnesota. I've never liked the way that Jaden McDaniels deals with Luka. I think Luka's just too big for him and too strong for him, and he's just kind of able to get to his spots where and when he wants. I would go probably Jaden McDaniels on Reeves and try to neutralize Reeves in some way, shape, or form. I think I would go Ant on Luka, and then I would go Randall on LeBron. And that's not great. It's not like an awesome matchup. It's not a great set of matchups for them, in my opinion. But I just don't know that they have a great set of matchups either. And then when Nikhil comes on, Nikhil can come on and take Austin Reeves, and then you slide Jaden McDaniels over to Luka, and then you still have to figure out the LeBron matchup in some way, shape, or form. And Jalen Clark gives them some ability to try and mix and match as well. But it just feels hard if Rudy might not be able to stay on the court because they're going to play 5 out. And if Rudy is on the court when you're playing 5 out, the problem isn't really the defense. It is truly like the offense to me, because you're not going to be able to play 3 for 2 with Rudy out there. The way that the Timberwolves like almost win, and I swear I'll throw it back to you in a second, is the one thing that Rui kind of struggles with to me is kind of dealing with like physicality. If there's a way for them to try and get like Randall matched up on Rui and just like try to bury him on the block, or if there's a way where like Rudy is just like gonna go up and catch deep and like lay it up over the top of Rui, I think that's a way to like potentially neutralize it. I just don't know that I trust the Timberwolves to be able to get to those matchups consistently, I guess.
Yeah, no, I think he could have an advantage in the lane. It's just, are they willing to play through it, play to it consistently?
And can Ant make the right decision with that too? Correct.
Ant has to make the right decision, and then whoever Ant throws the ball to, whether it's Julius, whoever, then they have to make the right decision. But if I had to guess, I think the Lakers will say, Jaden McDaniels, you make a bunch of threes. You shoot 8, 9, 10 threes a game, even if they're from the corner, and let's see if you're going to make them. And I think they'll let it play out. Like
Rudy shots at the basket. Rudy hook shots.
Rudy non-dunk. Rudy non-dunk. So like we're going in, and our scout is Rudy doesn't dunk the ball. Jaden McDaniels doesn't get, make him make catch and shoots. Ant has to, we take the ball out of his hands. And like you say, that's how you negate the fact that you don't really have a great defender. Not that a lot of people do for Anthony Edwards. Some teams do. He's just that type of player. What you said on the other end is what I would find the most fascinating, because I've said I think Anthony Edwards could be one of the best two-way players in this league. We know he's one of the best offensive players in this league. I think at the point of attack defensively, Anthony Edwards has insane upside and ability. Putting him on Luka for long stretches of a playoff series is something I'm here for. I would love to see that. You have to be careful with foul trouble, right? Because we know Luka can draw fouls. But if there's someone on that team, I think you're right. Physically, I haven't loved Jaden McDaniels' defense all year, Sam. Maybe I'm off there. Not that it's been bad. I just don't think it's like, we haven't talked about him as an all defense.
We expect him to be an all defense guy. Yeah, he hasn't been that.
He hasn't been that. And so I think that would be really fascinating to see if Ant can just dominate. Can Anthony Edwards be the best player in the series on both ends of the floor? And that's not an easy task whenever you're playing the Lakers with Luka and LeBron. This one will be fun. This was a good one to lead off with.
Yeah, and this is also the big question here. So how do you feel about Minnesota doing their own version of small ball with Naz Reid and Julius Randle? I just think it's less effective than the Lakers version of small ball because that allows the Lakers to just switch everything and be completely like they're going to be completely fine with switching everything if they want to, and then just like throwing occasional blitzes at Anthony Edwards, right? They'll go 2 on the ball, force Ant to be able to make decisions, and then when you go Naz and Julius, again, it just kind of becomes like a 3-point shoot-a-thon then, right? And maybe Minnesota gets hot for a couple games and knocks down shots, but I think that the Lakers probably hold the advantage there when that happens. I will say, like, I do think that the Nuggets are probably the hardest matchup for the Lakers in the first round. I think that this is one of the harder matchups because the Timberwolves do at least like pose things for the Lakers that will be difficult to deal with. But, you know, it's just going to be tricky, I think. I think this is going to be a really, really difficult spot for Minnesota. And, you know, I would go Lakers in 6 probably here. I feel pretty good about Los Angeles in this series. But I do think that there are some, you know, difficult things here. And I think Scott Schmitz brings up a good point, too. Like, Ant did go nuts against, like, Oklahoma City last year. And then I forget, Phoenix in the first round as well. And neither of those teams had rim protection. And I think that is a key. Ant is going to be able to get to the lane in this series. I think like somewhat effectively, especially if the Lakers do decide to switch a decent amount. But I just don't know that it's enough for me either.
Well, that's what I was going to say is this is all assuming the Lakers can keep him contained even when throwing 2 at him, right? I mean, so depending on who you're throwing at him in that situation, he breaks that, and then now you're playing 5 on 3 and you're really in trouble. So I think that that's probably the scheme the Lakers have to use, and then they have to execute it. I would love to see Minnesota counter that by saying, hey, we are going to Rudy's the biggest player on the floor on the back line of your defense. We're going to throw him lobs. He's going to catch and finish. He's going to clean up every offensive. See if you can, like, what I would love is, can you play Jackson Hayes onto the floor, Sam? You know what I mean? Like, we talk about Rudy getting played off the floor. Can Minnesota strategically make Rudy so good offensively, so impactful offensively, keep him impactful defensively somehow? Maybe you mix in some zones or something that they say, JJ says, you know what? We got to put Jackson Hayes on the court because he is just destroying us with his size. I don't know if it can be done. It would be interesting if they could.
So here'd be my other question for you, and I think we can end on this one. When the Timberwolves play Naz and Randall, and then they play like Dante, Nickeil Alexander-Walker, Mike Conley, like some combination of that trio, let's say, right? Who do you send the double from? Probably Alexander Walker, right?
Oh,
and that's it's not great, right?
No, this would be that's where I think when Naz comes on the floor, it gets interesting because Conley knocks down shots and is a great decision maker. Naz been making shots and I think will make good decisions. Naz can knock down shots. Yeah, that's a tough lineup to throw 2 on the ball, in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree. So I think that lineup against the Lakers small lineup is probably the one that's going to tell the tale of the series. Sure. How that lineup and how Ant makes decisions against that lineup in order to find the open shots. That's going to be the key to the series to me.
And then can that lineup hold up defensively, right? We've seen Naz.
Yes.
Wasn't it the Nuggets series last year where it was like Naz all of a sudden was awesome defensively or something for a series? Can Julius hold up a little bit better defensively? You know, like can that lineup guard the Lakers at all? Or to your point, are you just playing offense versus offense where the Lakers still have Luka, LeBron, Austin Reeves, and a couple shooters on the other end as well?
Yeah, I agree. I'll take the Lakers in 6 here, but there are things that Minnesota presents that can cause them problems to me.
I'm with you. I would take the
Yeah.
Lakers in the series as well, but if they can find a way to keep Rudy on the court, and if Ant can be the best two-way player in the series, I think Minnesota absolutely has a chance to knock him off.
Yeah, and shout out to Shabugan for the super chat. After watching Minnesota over the last month, do you trust Chris Finch when the lights get brighter? I don't. Their execution's been poor. Look, we've seen Finch do it in the playoffs, though. Like, I understand complaints about this, like, lately, but, you know, it's not like Chris Finch wasn't their coach last year when they got to the Final Four, basically, of the NBA. So, yeah, I think that'll be fine. Okay. Next up, let's go to the other Western Conference series, because that's the one that I'm probably most looking forward to watching. The Los Angeles Clippers against the Denver Nuggets. This is the hottest team in the NBA versus one of the two best players in the NBA. It's this team that can kind of throw bodies at you in waves versus a team with like no depth whatsoever. It's a series where the two players on Denver that you have to neutralize are Nikola Jokic and Jamal Murray, and the Clippers have, frankly, probably the best duo in the league at being able to slow those guys down. If you're talking about like high level defensive specialist types in Ivica Zubac and Chris Dunn. And yet you also have Nikola Jokic, and Nikola Jokic is unbelievable. He's an unbelievable basketball player.
You also have one of the best coaches in the NBA and another team that fired their coach 6 days ago. So
seems not great.
Listen, maybe, yeah, seems like advantage of the Clippers without trying to be disrespectful there. I'm fascinated for this one as well, because again, we're going to give Zubac a ton of love over the next couple days. As you mentioned earlier, spoiler alert, he will be on all defense teams. You have a chance to go try to slow down one of the top two players in the league this season. Again, we won't spoil that conversation, but I would guess both of us have Jokic either 1 or 2 in that conversation. And you have a chance to go and defend that guy. And I'm glad you brought up Chris Dunn, because Jamal Murray is huge for this Nuggets team. Whenever we've seen the Nuggets at their best, it always seems like it's when Murray's at his best. And Chris Dunn in that starting lineup gives them a chance. And then the rest of it can kind of fill in, I think, fairly decently. What you probably put Kawhi on. How does that play out? So probably Powell on Brown. And then how did the other two matchups go?
So you're talking about from which team's perspective?
Clippers perspective. So Zubac on Jokic, Dunn on Murray. Like, where do you put Harden? Like, I was going to put Harden on Gordon just because I feel like
I would do that.
He could hold up physically there. Put Powell on Christian Brown, and then you let Kawhi deal with Michael Porter Jr.
So that's one option. The other option is to just let Kawhi be like a help specialist, where you put Harden on probably Porter Jr. Man, that's hard. I think it actually does probably have to be Harden on Gordon. The thing is that all three of those guys are good cutters.
I was going to say, I don't want Harden on Porter Jr. because he's running off screens, but I don't want Harden on Brown because he's a good cutter, and then I don't want Harden on Gordon because he's a good cutter. So I found myself not liking any of those matchups.
Yeah, so it's not ideal for sure. Ultimately, though, I do wonder if Zubac's presence can at least make Jokic is going to get his. Like, he's the best player offensively in the world. I don't know that there's a case otherwise. Like, he is offensively at least that guy. But if Zubac can make him even like slightly more of a perimeter player, it does really go into the favor of the Clippers here, I think. Even with how Jokic has shot this year, he's been incredible. The more interesting question to me is, how do the Nuggets match up with the Clippers? I'm guessing it's going to have to be Gordon on Kawhi, Christian Brown on Harden. And then what do you do with Norm Powell? You probably have to put Jamal on him. And that feels not great to me with Jamal's health situation right now.
Yeah. Do they even think about putting Porter Jr. on him? And then you let Jamal guard Dunn. But then I feel like then you're trying to help.
Maybe.
But then you're helping off Dunn with Jamal Murray. That doesn't seem great. Like that doesn't seem like a great use of a defender that's not gonna. I'm not saying they are gonna completely not guard Dunn, but like the one guy you can help off of in that starting lineup, it doesn't seem ideal to have Jamal Murray guard that guy. So
Yeah. And look, like if Jamal was healthy, I would feel probably somewhat differently about this series too. Like I think it becomes a little bit more interesting. But after that, like awesome little run that Jamal had, right in the middle of the season there, it's been like a little bit more questionable as he's dealt with this injury lately, like over his last 5 games here since he's been like in and out of the lineup. Like he's only been shooting, I guess he's shooting 48, 36, 83, but that's really on the basis of 2 monster games as opposed to, he had 10 points in a game, 17 points in a game, and then 15 points in a game. But if you go back to the time, what was this? The 29 games before that, he was averaging 24, 4, and 6 on 51, 42, 94 again, and like looked like the Jamal of old. So that's kind of the swing guy to me in this series. Like, what do you get out of Jamal? He's obviously dealing with some sort of, it seems like hamstring injury right now. And if he's a real dude, it changes, but especially in the Clippers, like bench lineups defensively, because the other thing that the Clippers do is they can just throw Derrick Jones Jr. out there and he can be another body that can just go and be a stopper on somebody.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think for the Nuggets, it's the depth as well. You mentioned a team that doesn't have a lot of depth, and rightfully so, but they're going to have to play somebody. So what does Russ – I mean, this was always the thing with Russ, right? I think a lot of people would have said that Russ in the regular season could be a overall positive for the Nuggets. But what was Russ going to be in the playoffs for a team whose ultimate goal is winning a championship? And then is Jalen Pickett going to get playoff minutes? Is Peyton Watson going to be trusted to play in the playoffs this year? And some of these are things we don't know because obviously there was some turmoil between the front office and the coaching staff through the last couple of seasons with how players were used in specific situations. So who knows how those players are going to be used now with an interim head coach and no general manager to speak of at the time for Denver. So I'm fascinated to see what their overall rotation will even be once you get past the 5 starters. And I assume Russell Westbrook will be in the lineup in the rotation. And so it becomes a major issue, I guess, if he does in terms of his shooting.
So we spoke earlier about making Jokic like slightly more of a perimeter player. Like he's not going to be a perimeter player. He's going to be just like a little bit more of a perimeter player, right? Against Zubats. Do you know what Jokic is shooting over his last 30 games from 3?
I feel like it's come down a little. It's come down a little bit, right? So
yeah,
37, 36?
He's at 33.8.
Oh,
3.
Worse than I thought. I knew it was down, but wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, it's 145 attempts. Like it's, small sample to some extent, but it isn't the 48 that he was shooting earlier this year. Right. So it's really going to have to come down to like Jokic just being a monster 3-point shooter, being able to find cutters when guys like Harden or, somebody else lets their guy get loose off the ball as a cutter. I think that's the key. The thing that worries me most about Denver isn't even like the Russ minutes necessarily. It's the other guys. Like, I just think Peyton Watson is going to have to play in this series, like pretty real minutes. And then like, I don't think Julian Strawther like has a chance in this series. Like he cannot play in this series. Whoever he's in for, Harden's going to call him up immediately into a ball screen. Kawhi's going to call him up immediately into a ball screen. And yeah, you can try and blitz those guys and get the ball out of their hands to protect Strawther. But again, this team, like we saw today against the Warriors, like they're pretty good at dealing with those situations. They know how to attack from the middle out with guys like Dunn, with guys like Harden, with guys like Zubats as well.
I think my one question with LA is, what if Jokic gets Zubac in foul trouble?
Great. Then it's like Ben Simmons, and that's a huge win.
So that would be interesting in terms of he's got to be great in this series, but he's got to stay out of foul trouble because they just don't have a whole lot of great options after that.
Yeah, I think that's right. We're going to talk a lot about Zubats in the coming 2 days here. Zubats, especially tomorrow's episode when we do like DPOY, most improved and stuff. I mean, Zubats has been incredible this season. Defensively, he's been awesome offensively. The big thing that I do want to note too is Jokic's defense has not been great this year. We can just kind of say that it is what it is, I guess, is the easiest way to put it. It does feel like a real worry against this team where Harden's going to call him up pretty regularly. Kawhi's going to be able to call him up fairly regularly. Even like Powell's like pretty comfortable in ball screens now. Not like crazy decision maker, but a real scorer at least. I do think this is like a troublesome, this is a troublesome matchup for the Nuggets with the way that the Clippers are playing right now. And look, like the two wild cards here are, I think you brought up the key one on the court with, if Zubats gets in foul trouble, if Jokic can like figure out a way to stop him and neutralize him by getting him off the court, that is massive. It's enormous for the Nuggets, and it gives them a real puncher's chance. The other piece here is just Kawhi's health, right?
Yeah. Yep.
And frankly, like Harden's health too, to an extent. Like he has not gotten through full seasons in the playoffs particularly well. This is around the time where it does feel like sometimes the wear and tear of his physical game can catch up with him. So the injury, like wear and tear factor for the Clippers as well, does feel like a real thing worth noting here.
And I know I kind of made light of it earlier, and again, like I truly don't mean any disrespect to David Adelman, but Ty Lue should have a coach. There should be a sideline advantage for the Clippers in this series in terms of, now sometimes the Jimmies and the Joes are just more important than the X's and the O's. But if there are X's and O's to be found, if there's late game situations, if there's certain matchups or whatever, I feel like we would have to say, based off the stuff we know right now, Ty Lue will be the one to find that faster and quicker and make those adjustments. And if he's able to do it in game 2, where it takes Adelman and staff till game 4, maybe you lose 1 or 2 games and that tips the series. So as you said, this is probably going to be the most fun one to watch just because of the names, but also some of the, like, just as we went through the matchups, I found myself going, I don't love that, or I do really like this for this team. I think it'll be fascinating.
Just real quick, we're not going to get a chance to talk about this as the playoffs get going. Ewan Ross asks for thoughts on the firings of obviously Michael Malone and Calvin Booth. I mean, look, we'll start on the Booth front. Like, I feel like Bryce and I have taken shots at Booth's team building kind of all year, really for the last like 2 years. Just didn't do a good enough job. Winning on the margins is the critical thing in that job when you have Nikola Jokic, and he lost on the margins consistently. He signed Reggie Jackson to the mid-level last year, had to trade him away this past offseason for 3 second-round picks to get rid of the contract. Signs Dario Saric this offseason. Saric can't play. Just sorry. We're at the point where like there are rumors about him going over to Europe this offseason. Winning on the margins is critical. And
Zeke
while
contract, can't get on the court.
Yep.
Some of the draft picks, like Holmes got hurt, but otherwise, like we're talking about, like, is Peyton Watson going to be able to last on the floor in the playoffs this year?
Yeah.
So
the 3 selections, and what was that? The 2023 draft of Julian Strawther, Jalen Pickett, Hunter Tyson. They had 28, 32, and like 40 or so. And I don't think I had any of those players in my top 40 that year. I understood the idea of going older, and I got that. It's just that I didn't like the players at the end of the day that they took, and that was the problem, was the evaluation.
Idea behind the process was right. The execution of said process was incorrect.
Totally. So that's what worries me a little bit about this. And, look, I think that Sam Amick and maybe Tony Jones wrote this in The Athletic, but Matt Lloyd is the seeming, rumor out there of who the Nuggets are looking at to be their next GM. For people who don't know, Matt Lloyd is the general manager currently of the Minnesota Timberwolves under Tim Connolly, has been with the Orlando Magic. Matt Lloyd is regarded as one of the best evaluators in the league, actually. If that's the hire, we'll talk about that when it happens, but I would be in favor of that hire for what it's worth. I think that would be interesting. I think Matt's earned his time and earned his stripes as a front office executive, and has a really, really good eye for talent. So if that's the move, I'm all for it. Michael Malone's probably a little bit more of a complicated conversation. It did feel like this was kind of ending this year. That's the reality, right? It felt like this situation had run its course. It's not anything about Michael. It's not anything about, the Nuggets and the players. It's that it felt like it's run its course and that they needed a change of voice. Like I talk about this with the Penguins all the time, right? Like I think they probably should have removed Mike Sullivan like 2 or 3 years ago. And it's not a statement on Sullivan as a coach. It's just that sometimes you need a change just to get something different out of the players. And maybe you become a worse team, maybe you become a better team. But if you want to be great, you need to go do something different, right? Because what you're doing right now isn't working. And that's how I feel about Malone. Malone's going to go and get another head coaching job. He's going to be fantastic somewhere else. I do just think that sometimes you need to do something different. And this is an example of that.
Yeah, I mean, you said it right there. Like sometimes the voice in the room, it's needs change. It's stale, whatever. I was shocked just from the perspective of the point of the season that it happened. And maybe I need to stop being surprised by these things happening when they happen. To me, there's something telling about the fact they felt they needed to do it when they did it, though. Still, like they couldn't even let it get through the playoffs. Maybe I don't know. So I had heard that like there was some disconnect between things there going back a couple years now.
Look, it's not a secret that there had been real disconnect between Michael Malone and Calvin Booth. That's just not that's not like a made up thing. Like that is real.
So there's been that for a while. I didn't think it would end up in being both of them getting fired. I assumed one of them would win out, and I have no knowledge or closeness to the Nuggets organization to know any of that. Ultimately, they decided to let both of them go, and I don't know. It'll make for a fascinating offseason because that salary cap situation in Denver is very interesting for a new GM to take on, and it's a very win now team for a new coach to take on, which can happen, right? So it'll be interesting who ends up landing there, and I think the conversation will be more fun once that happens.
Yeah, agree. Okay, let's go to the East.
Okay.
Do you want to start or finish with your team?
Let's finish.
Okay. So we're going to go next to the Indiana Pacers versus the Milwaukee Bucks. I'll just let you go. I feel like I talked a lot during these last two. What is the thing you're most looking forward to in this series?
I want to see if Milwaukee can run with the Pacers. Like, I want to see if they can keep up with the pace that Indiana is going to play at. I feel like we're getting close to Tyrese Halliburton, like what we saw the beginning of last season. I have a feeling we'll at least discuss Tyrese Halliburton on Tuesday. Whether he ends up somewhere or not, he will be in the conversation of ending up somewhere or not. I like Pascal Siakam. I like Andrew Nembhard. Aaron Nesmith has been playing really well. Miles Turner. Like, I think it'll be really interesting. Here's what it comes down to. Like, Giannis will be the best player in the series, Sam. I have very little questions about that. I think he has to be unquestioned. Like, it has to be unreal version of Giannis. And the scary thing for the Pacers is we have seen unreal Giannis this year. and he has been incredible. And so I'm fascinated to see how they try to guard him and what they do with him. And then I always say this with the Bucks. Can the other guys make shots? Can Kyle Kuzma make threes? I think Bobby Portis being back is huge for them, potentially winning this series. Can Gary Trent Jr. make threes? Does Taurean Prince continue to be one of the best three-point shooters in the NBA? Does Ryan Rollins, who shout out Ryan Rollins for stepping into Damian Lillard's shoes and like being solid, shooting over 40% from three. Like, can those guys make shots? Because I assume Indiana is going to throw everybody they have at Giannis and then make others beat them.
I think that's probably right. And they have the bodies to be able to throw at Giannis. Like Naismith is like strong and physical. Pascal Siakam is long and, athletic. Obviously Miles Turner can be like a help defender that rotates over. They just have the kind of bodies to throw at them that will make life a little bit more difficult, in my opinion. The one thing that's like worth noting here is I think people are surprised that Indiana is in this position based off of the way they started the season. Indiana's 49-32, by the way. They've been so good over the course of like the last 2/3 of the year. It's not just like a half season. It's more than that. They've been unbelievable recently. There are currently, if I remember correctly here, I'm going to pull up the number. There are, let's see here, 7 teams in the league to have a winning record against the top 10 teams in the league by net rating, according to Cleaning the Glass. And the Pacers aren't just like one of them. They are like very clearly one of them. They are 15-9 in those games against top 10 teams in the league. They've been terrific this year against the elite competition. And Milwaukee is 5-19 in those games against top 10 competition. To me, this is the Pacers like all the way. The Pacers have just played so well recently. I just don't know. I don't know what the Bucks do to counter Milwaukee's pace. I don't know what they do to stop them defensively. It just feels this feels like a matchup that is very difficult for the Milwaukee Bucks. And oh, by the way, like this is before we get to the coaching mismatch that is Doc Rivers against Rick Carlisle.
Yeah. And we're both assuming that, Damian Lillard will not play in this series, right? Like that's kind of how I'm approaching things. We don't know what's going to happen. I realize there's been some reports that maybe push positive. Again, whenever it's something like blood clots, like all I hope is, 1, glad they found it, and 2, hope that Dame is okay and healthy and all of that. But Milwaukee's chance is getting crazy hot from 3. They are second in the NBA in 3-point percentage this year. So, like, if they're able to knock down shots, but Giannis just has to have, like, an unreal series for that to happen. He has been good against Indiana this year, but I'm with you. I think I would probably pick Indiana if I had to, but I'm not going to not give Giannis, a puncher's chance.
Yeah, I do get that on some level, and I think that that's probably the way to do it. I think that's definitely the way to do it, to be honest. But and look, like Milwaukee has won like 7 or 8 games in a row to close the season here. Like they've been hot. It's just that those wins came against like a Pistons team today, in overtime, where they didn't play. Obviously Cade didn't play in this game. And Asar, I believe, didn't play in this game. And
2 against the Pelicans, 1 against the Suns, 1 against the Sixers. They did beat the Heat. They did beat Minnesota.
But like the Heat are, I think, like 14-25 in their last 39 or something like that. Like, and Phoenix has been a catastrophe lately. It's just hard. It's hard.
And to your point, the 3 games before that, they lost by 20 to the Hawks, 9 to the Knicks, 10 to the Nuggets.
Yeah. And, look, like they did beat like a full strength Timberwolves team, right? So we can't ignore that. In that game, what you saw was, basically they played like the 3-4-5 Kuzma, Giannis, and Brook lineups. And, they did feel like they could kind of overpower another team that plays big because Giannis, ends up with like a triple double in that game and plays super well. But the thing that worries me about this series specifically for Milwaukee is that defensively, it just feels like they've never totally gotten it together this year in terms of the communication stuff. Like they still will just like randomly blow like ice coverages in terms of like Brooke Lopez will be yelling out like ice, ice, ice. And then like somebody like Torian Prince or somebody will let the guy get middle. And Brooks just like, well, like I'm not fast enough to recover. That's not the way that this works, right? Like I can't do this. So even just like little breakdowns like that against a Pacers team, like the thing that the Pacers do is they make you make quick decisions. That's what they're always going to do. They're going to play up and down. And Tyrese Halliburton is one of the best decision makers in the league. And he's surrounded by guys that are drilled so quickly to just make the rapid decision to get the ball across the court. That's what worries me in this series for Milwaukee, are just like the little breakdowns. And look, Kuzma's been a fucking nightmare for Milwaukee. Like we can just call that out as it is too. Like it is what it is at this point. It's a deal that just did not work out for them to this point, at least. He's playing 32 minutes, averaging 14 points, shooting 45, 31, 66. He has a negative assist to turnover ratio. Like the defense is still, just kind of all over the map. It just feels like a tough spot.
Yeah, and we've talked all season long, off season long, even ever since the Dame trade, was who was going to take primary defensive matchups. And Indiana has, Tyrese Halliburton for one, in terms of like who's going to guard that guy, and who's going to stay locked in and off the screens. And I know Tyrese isn't a huge like attack the basket guy, but he's obviously a guy that's found a rhythm here later in the season. So again, I'm with you. I would lean Indiana for sure. It's just, I know for me in the back of my head, I'm always going to go, but they have Giannis, for me, a top 3 player in the NBA this season. And they have guys that can shoot around him. And like Giannis and Brook together defensively maybe can hold. I just think Indiana's going to play too fast, Sam. Like straight up, like my natural reaction to this matchup is Indiana's going to be running around on both ends of the floor, and it's just going to eventually catch up with Milwaukee. Even against Giannis, just Indiana seems to have such active hands, and they're always running and scrambling and rotating and all of that. I just trust them to be able to do that. And I don't trust Milwaukee to be able to play at that pace both ways. If Milwaukee can slow the game down somehow and get Indiana out of that, then I would say they would have a better chance.
Yeah, so Kyle Kuzma has played 539 minutes with Giannis so far for the Bucks, and he's played 498 minutes without Giannis so far. In the minutes where Kuzma plays with Giannis, they're like a plus 2.9. Cool. In the minutes where Kuzma plays without Giannis, they are a -7. And in the minutes where Giannis plays without Kuzma, they are a plus 7.7.
Yeah.
When you move, Middleton for a guy like this, and you don't have Dame, where Middleton might have been able to make up for some of that perimeter creation, this feels really tough. And oh, by the way, like just the way that the Bucks have to play defensively with Brook, like the Pacers are well equipped to be able to pick and pop them against Brook. They're well equipped to be able to force all sorts of different problems with like ghost screens and quick little slide actions.
Well, Tyrese just dribble pull-ups, right? Like if Brook's going to drop, Tyrese, you get a good screen, Tyrese is just dribbling right into a three-pointer, let alone the pick and pop option for Turner or whoever. So
yeah, this to me is like, this might even be like Pacers in like 5 to me, honestly. I feel pretty good. It will take a truly like Herculean Giannis just going like out of this world effort, assuming that Lillard is not there. This does change for me if Lillard is there,
sure.
But I just don't think they have the offensive firepower to keep up with the Indiana otherwise.
Agreed.
Okay. Bryce.
What's up?
I'm just going to give you the floor here. We've got New York Knicks versus Detroit Pistons. Pistons are the 6 seed. The Knicks are the 3 seed. I think I'm going to surprise you with where I'm at on this. I want to give you the floor to be able to talk through this because you have watched the Pistons excruciatingly often over the course of the last 5 years.
I didn't think I was ever going to get a chance to analyze, potentially video breakdown a Detroit Piston playoff game. We joked over the last couple of years. Can you imagine the viewership for a podcast over at the Pistons Pulse if we broke down a Pistons playoff game? And we will get that sometime in the next week or so. I will tell you, this is the matchup I wanted for Detroit, not because I think it's a great matchup necessarily, or I think they're going to win it or upset or whatever, solely because all year long, my phrase for the Detroit Pistons has been data collection. And I think this gives Trajan Langdon and the organization the most data collection possible in terms of it's a very interesting defensive matchup for Jalen Duren having to guard Karl-Anthony Towns. It's a really interesting defensive matchup for Asar Thompson guarding Jalen Brunson. Although the Pistons started Cade Cunningham on Jalen Brunson in the most recent matchup, which I want to talk with you a little bit. And then I want to see Cade Cunningham playing against the Knicks, where I assume OG Anunoby is going to get the matchup, but where Cade has been pretty successful against that Knicks defense this season.
Okay. So the key to this is trying to figure out what Knicks are you going to get? Because over the course of this little run, since like Brunson was out of the lineup and then, came back here a little bit late in the year so he could get eligible for awards and everything. What the key was to me is that the Knicks started to like play Tibbs ball again, as opposed to the free flowing offense that we saw throughout the course of the year. You know what I mean? Like where it was all sorts of super fun actions and you had the Brunson Cat 2-man game and everything like that. Over the course of this last little run, they've been like pretty good on defense, and they have been, I think it's like the last 15 games, and I think they're like 9-6 in those games too, by the way. But it's like a lot of defense. It's some 2 big lineups, not a lot, but like some 2 big lineups. Mitchell Robinson is obviously back, playing some games here. And the guy that I really just need to call out here and just throw an immense amount of roses and flowers to is OG Anunoby.
Yes.
The defense has been spectacular. He played 74 games this year. He has been just unbelievable on that end of the court. Offensively, obviously, as well, he's taken just a huge leap over the back. I don't even know. Do you want to call it like half of the season? Maybe like back third of the season, maybe. So over his last 23 games, so since, mid-February, he's averaging 22 points, 5 rebounds, 3 assists, shooting 47, 39, 82. He's just been a monster.
Yeah, he's been incredible. I recorded with our guy GMAC previewing the Pistons Knicks most recent matchup, which OG did not play in fairness. No OG, no Josh Hart in that game. But yeah, he rattled off a 15 game stretch or something that OG had where the number, it was like a 50, 40, 80, 25, 26 points, something crazy.
Yeah.
He's been really good this year. Like his play on the wing, 2-way play on the wing has been awesome. And I think he is the X factor, the key. I think I know what Jalen Brunson's going to be in the playoffs. I feel like we've seen that. I think I know what Cat's going to be in the playoffs. I even kind of feel like I know what Josh Hart is, Mikal Bridges, whatever. OG playing at that sort of level on both ends, I think is the key for the Knicks. Not just in this series where I think if he's not, Detroit has a chance, but for them to make any sort of run after this first round series.
So the key to me here is kind of twofold. And you mentioned both of these factors. The first one isn't Brunson to me. It is Cat, because I do think Cat is where they can get a real marginal advantage in this series if JB decides to like really roll with Duren, and Duren has been better on defense like over the back half of the year. Like we can call that out and be fair.
Yes.
I do think it is like a disaster matchup for Duren a little bit with Cat. What worries me there is if he doesn't stay with, or if he does stay with Duren and isn't as willing to play like Isaiah Stewart 30 minutes, that's where it could get tricky, because I love the Stewart matchup on Cat. And if the Knicks go two bigs, I really like the fact that Detroit has a lot of different routes to be able to potentially slow down the Knicks going two bigs with Stewart and Duren. But the problem there, if that happens, is that it really neuters Detroit's offense because of the second piece of this, which is who gets the Brunson matchup. I would bet you that the reason they tried Cade on Brunson recently was because if they do have to go with that multi-big lineup in the playoffs,
You can't play a SAR.
you can't play a SAR. It becomes or if you do that, you have to play, Stewart or Duren at the 5 dealing with Mitch. And maybe you just like throw a SAR on Cat and just see if he can bother him athletically. Right.
So
I'm intrigued by that potentially too. But if you do that, then you're taking a SAR off of Brunson, who is the head of the snake and makes everything happen for New York. So how all of those matchups like kind of intertwine to me is what makes this an incredibly interesting series.
another thing that they haven't done against the Knicks, but have done against other teams is they could put Harris on Cat and then just say, Jalen Duren, you're going to guard Josh Hart if they want to choose to not guard Josh Hart and see how that goes. Another thing that came away from Cade being on Brunson, you know what it did on the other end of the floor whenever the Knicks missed? It immediately put Brunson on Cade. And so like that was something I put in my notes was I didn't here's why I don't like it. If Cade Cunningham gets 2 fouls in the first 3 minutes of the game, it changes the trajectory of the game, and Jalen Brunson can draw fouls. But I was like, man, this is kind of interesting because now you could use a SAR as an off-the-ball roamer and rim protector, disruptor, depending on who you put him on. And then the cross matches going the other way of immediately getting Brunson on Cade, not having to run any actions to get it or anything like that. And then you can run a Cade Duren pick and roll against Brunson and Cat, I think would be interesting to JB and his staff. So I do think it'll be, here's the other thing. A SAR also gets in foul trouble. So maybe they just don't want to start a SAR on Brunson, him get in foul trouble, and then he's got to right away. And, it seems to mess with his head more than it does. Like, I think Cade could actually play with 2 fouls. You take him off Brunson, you go put him on somebody else, and he'll figure it out. So
I can't remember if they've done this all year. I feel like I did watch these games, but I can't remember. Have they tried Holland on Brunson at all?
I would have to look through my notes to see. I would assume he would get some of that matchup though when he's in the game. And I think I didn't know if Ron would be in the playoff rotation.
No, he's definitely in the playoff rotation.
He's going to be in the playoff rotation.
Yeah, no, he has been really useful. I have to when we do rookie teams, like Ron Holland is like he's very, very difficult for me.
We will
in terms of
spoiler, I didn't put him on, but he deserves part of the conversation. Like the dude played 81 games, a lot of production in those 81 games. The only reason he didn't play 82 was because of the suspension. But when you get to the very end of the all rookie, I think valuing a rookie who played 81 games, rotation minutes for a playoff team starts to be a pretty decent argument, even though his numbers aren't great.
No, I completely agree with you. Ron Holland played 1,200 minutes this year on a 44-win team. That's something that very, very few rookies can actually say this year.
Can't make a jump shot. So that tells you what else he was doing was very, very impactful.
Yeah. Okay. So we've talked a lot about the Knicks on offense and how Detroit can match up with that. And I think they actually have like a real chance to match up with that, especially with the Knicks having a relatively poor offensive run here recently. Let's go with. On the other end, how do you think they go about slowing down Cade?
I would put OG on him. is what I would do. I would
I agree.
not put Mikal Bridges on him. I think
That's a bad idea.
Mikal can't guard him. I'm sorry. Like I'm not.
No, he can't. Just point blank. Like
yeah.
we can. The better matchup is Josh Hart on him than Mikal. The best matchup is OG, like 100%. But the better matchup is 1000% Josh Hart over Mikal Bridges to me.
Because here's the thing that Cade has really developed throughout. I think he came into the league with this, but we didn't see it enough. He will take you into the post, and he's done it a lot recently, especially against certain matchups. And he will post Mikal 4 or 5 times, and he'll just do it over and over. I don't know if he can post OG. Cade has gotten a lot stronger. OG is strong.
No, that is a negative matchup for me for Detroit. If he tries to post OG, and again, like Cade has been great in the post. Like this isn't like a slight at him. It's just that OG is one of the best defenders in the league, just point blank. It's going to be tough. So where I'm at on this is that they basically have to just fight and scratch and claw to get Cade switched off of OG like regularly, be it with so like they love to run like the Duran ball screen with Cade particularly.
Yep.
Which is again to me why I would prefer to probably see a little bit more of Isaiah Stewart in this series. Even though Duran can certainly be like a better dunker spot player than what Stewart can be, I think they're going to have to run a lot of like 1-2, 1-3, 1-4 ball screens to try and get OG switched off of Cade and be able to try and make it work that way.
So that is a very like all season long part of their offense is early offense. They will go cleared outside and they will just run a pass and follow. They will run a ghost. They'll run a true ball, whether it's with Malik or Tim Hardaway Jr. or Sarr, whoever, and they just trying to get a switch, a matchup they like. Right? I assume that whoever Jalen Brunson is guarding is going to be involved in that action a lot. So then for the Knicks, are you going to do the Steph Curry with Jalen Brunson where you step up and you hard hedge those things and all of that? Yeah. And the thing is, though, like Cade that's potential foul trouble. Brunson steps up there. The ball handler runs into him. Now it's a 50-50 call. You're going to call a charge 20, 30 feet from the basket. But yeah, I think they'll have to get those switches. JB's done some interesting things. Like they'll run some K to Sarr ball screens, pick and roll stuff. Like that'll be fun as well to see.
So and that specific thing is really interesting because I think I assume that they will try to hide Brunson on a Sarr.
Yes. Yeah, because
right?
I don't know that. Yeah, I don't think you want Jalen having to chase Tim Hardaway Jr.
Or Beasley.
Yeah, you don't want him having to chase those guys. Beasley's been like straight up like a historic 3-point shooting season, and he will run off screens. They will run a lot of stuff for Tim Hardaway Jr. Not nearly as effective as Beasley, but he's like at 37 on good volume. Brunson, yeah, I think he has to guard a Sarr, right? There's no other option, and you're not going to put him on Harris, obviously. So yes. I think Harris
would just take him onto the block. Yeah. If Schroeder's out there, like maybe you can throw him on Schroeder for sure. I mean, like maybe you can hide him on Fontecchio at times. Like
I don't know if Simone's in the playoff rotation, Sam.
He might not be. Like the thing is that they play like 9 or 10 deep in the regular season. So I'm
fascinated to see what he does. What
do they shrink the rotation too? Yeah. Like that's a real question.
Schroeder's going to play. Beasley's going to play. Stu's going to play. I'm interested to see if they go with both of Fontecchio and Holland or just one of them, or if they ride the hot hand or how JB plays that out.
Look, he can play against one of those two, but one of those two, Fontecchio or Holland, is only going to be on the court for 10 to 15, 10 minutes, 10 minutes probably, right? Let's call it.
I would agree.
So, and it's going to be bench units. So you might be able to like try and hide those minutes away from Brunson if you want to as well. I don't know if there's a spot to hide him. That's because the thing that worries me with Asar is like Asar is just way more fucking athletic than he is. Like,
Well, here's the thing. I think Brunson would probably be fine, other than like Asar might average 5 offensive rebounds a game in the series. If
yeah,
like Brunson Asar is really good on the offensive boards. His cutting, he's still figuring out. Sometimes he cuts at the wrong time. He'll cut right into Jalen Duren or right into a baseline drive from Schroeder or something like that. I think Brunson would probably be okay there, but there's also going to be times where Asar just jumps higher than him because Asar can do that.
There's that, and there's the fact that like the Pistons have experimented with this too this year, where sometimes they will play Asar on the ball.
Correct. Yes. Yeah. No, they will do that also. So if they want to put Brunson in the action, and he's guarding Asar, he has no problems doing that whatsoever. Another thing is Detroit has played very fast. The back half of the season, maybe more. New York has to take care of the basketball, and they have to be able to stop Detroit in transition, because Detroit loves turning deflections, steals, blocks into transition going the other way. And that's where Malik does get some of his buckets. Asar, whether ball in hand or running the court, is really good in transition. Ron is really good in transition. They've really fed into this. We're going to try to be disruptive defensively, and then we're going to go on the offensive end. And those two things play hand in hand really well. And this is a team, I don't know. I'll be honest with you. I don't know if the streak's still going, but like they had a crazy streak of beating the other team in terms of points in the paint. So they will go, like, they will attack you in the paint over and over. And to your point, JD's gotten a lot better protecting the rim defensively. He's been better but Isaiah Stewart is really good. We would be talking about Isaiah Stewart on Monday if he had enough games where he played more than 20 minutes.
Yeah, he'd be a real all defense threat to me as well. So, yeah, I mean, I'm just really interested to see this series. The key guy for me in this series is probably Cat.
Yeah.
I think that Cat's going to have to be the one that takes them home, because the Pistons have multiple bodies to throw at Brunson. Cat's going to have to be the one that is able to take advantage of the mismatches he gets, be it Tobias Harris, be it Jalen Duren. Isaiah Stewart's not really a mismatch, but you know what? Isaiah Stewart's a little bit smaller than he is. Like, there are going to be times where Cat can like run him off of a screen or something, a pin down or, you know, a flare, and be able to get loose from him a little bit. So Cat is the guy for me in this one. It's going to have to be him that carries the Knicks.
For me, it's the Pistons offense and what that looks like in a playoff settings against a Tom Thibodeau defense. I know we kind of, have taken shots at Brunson, at Cat, at Bridges on that end of the floor. I think I would put 2 on Cade and tell those other guys, make the right decisions and make shots. And here's an argument. I'll make this argument whenever we do all NBA. I don't know who the second best player on the Detroit Pistons is, Sam. And, like Beasley's been incredible, but do they have that second option that can just go? Even if Cade does get 25, do they have the second option throughout an entire series? Can they continue to do it? Tobias one night, Beasley one night, Schroeder has a night, Duren has a night. Can they do that in a series against the same team? Maybe so. That's my worry, where the offense in the half court could really break down for Detroit.
Well, and it's the same conversation that we had with Minnesota and the Lakers, right? Like,
yeah.
There are going to be times where the Knicks just decide we're going to blitz the ball and we're going to take it out of Cade's hands.
They absolutely should at times, yes.
And the question for me is, who do you want to blitz from? Like, who is because if you put 2 on the ball against Asar is going to make the right decision.
Yep.
If you put 2 on the ball against, Tim Hardaway Jr. or Malik Beasley, they're going to knock down threes. But if it's Jalen Duren has to make the right decisions as a passer. If it's Isaiah Stewart has to make quick reads as a passer, which is something that he doesn't really do.
Correct.
So again, that's why to me, for the Pistons, the key action is going to be, not the 1-5 ball screen that they love to run with Duren. It's the 1-2s, the 1-3s, the 1-4s that we see, and how the Knicks handle those ball screens and how they're able to get the ball out of Cade's hands in those moments.
I agree. Everything you said right there, I would agree. I would trust Asar to catch. If I was the Knicks, I would not want Asar catching the ball at 15 feet, playing advantage 4-on-3. Duren has shown good passing flashes, but can he do it consistently? And Isaiah Stewart, again, I love, like, you will not find a bigger Isaiah Stewart defender, but like him having to do that would be interesting in a playoff setting, let alone what does rookie Ron Holland do? How does he respond to that? How does Simone Fontecchio respond to that? I think it's an option that the Knicks can always go to if Cade is really getting off.
Look, I'm going to say something stupid here, and Knicks fans, like, please just like burn me after the fact, like, honestly, like, Knicks fans, you have free reign if they win this series in 4 games, which they might, frankly, because they have drastically more talent than the Pistons. Whatever you want to say, I'm good with it. I'm going Pistons in 7.
I love it. I will not.
I weirdly like the matchup.
No.
I'm not saying that the Pistons are a better team. I just think that the matchup is really interesting for them. And I think that this is a really close series. It's one that, again, this could make me look so fucking stupid in like 2 weeks, and I'm so ready for it. Like, maybe it's Knicks at 7. I'll say Pistons in 7 because I like the matchup, but like, I'm aware of how stupid this is going to look. Put it that way. I'm fully aware, but for all of the things that we talked about here in terms of the matchup, and I know Cat played fine last year in the playoffs. I do. I get it. I just don't know if I trust him to be like the number one guy that I have to trust going into this series, because Brunson has been hurt and they have a lot of dudes to be able to throw at the ball. And it's really going to come down to Cat for me. And I'm aware that this is going to be stupid.
I think it's going to be very competitive. I have a lot of faith that this may end up sounding, I think Cade's going to show out on the big stage.
I do too.
I think this will be like his true coming out party. I know he's like got the Slam magazine and stuff has happened already. I don't know that everybody kind of really realizes how good of a year he's been. I'm just a little nervous for this team on this stage. Like, everybody fully being ready, but I do think they will be competitive, and I think that they do provide some issues for the Knicks.
And to be clear, I think this is a coaching mismatch for the Knicks. Like, all due respect to JB, I didn't love what I saw last year in the playoffs from the Cavs either. Like,
sure,
everything logically is telling me that the Knicks are better than they are. And yet the matchups are kind of saying something different. And look, maybe you are only as good as the matchups you can get to. I think this is a 7-game series. Maybe that's the way to put it. Like, I think this is a long series. I think this is a knockdown, like, drag out slugfest of a series. And like, maybe here's the other thing. Like, who guards Mikal well from the Pistons? Like, who guards OG? Like, OG is going to have to be Tobias probably. And if it's not Tobias, then it's going to have to be one of the wings, right? Or it's going to, like, I'm aware that this is stupid. I'm fully aware that this is stupid.
Don't back out now. Stay with it.
I'm going Pistons in 7.
I'm going
Pistons in 7.
We can have fun on the podcast.
Yeah. It's one of those picks where I'm aware that you can come drag me. I like the matchups here for the Pistons, even though the talent says something different.
Love it. I can't pick the Pistons because then I'd just be like a homer or whatever. So like, it's no fun for me to pick the Pistons. So
yeah, look, you should go with the Knicks and look smart. This way you can't lose.
Oh, like, no, people will be mad at me if they end up winning it and I did not pick them. So I think they will be competitive. I'm nervous about the second score.
Okay. That's all we got here today. I'm in Chicago, by the way. I did the full Chicago eating experience over the last 2 days. I got deep dish. Have you ever had Chicago deep dish, Bryce?
Yeah, I was in college, right after college. Isn't DePaul's in Chicago, right? I think we played at DePaul my
Yeah.
first year as a ops guy. So yeah, it's
I
fine.
always forget that you were an ops guy too.
Yeah, 1 year.
Yeah.
I hated it. I was miserable. It was so stressful. It had nothing to do with like the staff or the team or anything. It's just like it's a stressful position.
Yeah. Because you're dealing with like all the scheduling and everything.
Yeah, you gotta book flights and hotels and food and stuff like that, and then you're relying on other people to uphold their end of the job, and that's why I went bald at 23 is because I was in a stressful position way too early.
I am guessing that you do not like Chicago deep dish.
Yeah, like I'm
Not a
like,
fan.
so what? I was whatever.
Yeah. I like it. I can eat like a slice and a half of it or else I will feel sick otherwise.
Yeah.
It's just like an enormous amount of food to me.
Yeah.
The other thing that I did today was I got the Italian beef, which was freaking great. Shout out Al's. You know, I went for the basic one. I know that Al's is all over Chicago. But man, it's just delicious. You get the giardiniera, you get the sweet peppers. You just can't do it better than an Italian beef sandwich.
Love it.
Yeah, you have not watched The Bear because of the stress, I assume, right?
We started it. It was one of
Yeah.
like 7 series that we started and got a handful of episodes in. So
It's that one. It's that sandwich. Okay. The last thing that we want to talk about here is just Hoop Summit real quick. I'm not going to spend more than like 5 or 6 minutes on this. I want to shout out first and foremost Marshall Cho. Marshall Cho is the coach of the world team. The fact that this world team that we saw in practice throughout the course of this week took Team USA with Cam Boozer and AJ DeBansa and Mikkel Brown and all of these stars, right? Nick Kaminia, Chris Senak, whoever you want to call out. There are like 8 first rounders on that team. The fact that he was able to figure out how to defend that team and make their life miserable, shout out to him. That dude is an awesome basketball coach. You see him in these practices and stuff at Hoop Summit, and he's always really impressive. So I just wanted to shout him out first because at world practices, me and every other scout there, we thought Team USA was going to win by 30 to 40. Just point blank. Our over under on the number of first rounders throughout the practice week that we thought we saw, I kept asking people this question, was like 1.5. Tunde Yesufu for Baylor next year, you know, he is a guy that definitely will be a first rounder. That guy is awesome. He's a super athlete. You can tell he's like very influenced by Anthony Edwards, just the way he plays super hard, has the frame to be able to do it. He even wears like number 5, right? Just kind of who he is. Plays incredibly hard, physical, powerful wing, great athlete, not nearly Anthony Edwards in terms of the skill level, but probably a guy that when I do my 2026 mock draft, I will have as a lottery pick going into next season. Beyond him, like, I didn't think it was an impressive practice week from Bogle Markovic. I didn't think it was a particularly impressive week. I thought Dame Sarr was somewhat impressive, actually. He was a guy that, 6'7", 7'1" wingspan, has the frame to look the part and showed a lot of flashes. And he's clearly gotten way better from the start of the season to the end of the season here. I think if he entered this draft, and he is draft eligible this year, if he entered this draft, you'd probably be looking at like an early 2nd round pick, maybe late 1st, if there was a situation where just a ton of guys end up leaving this draft class to go make NIL money this year. Impressive, but like very raw. They tried to play him at point, just like no chance that was happening all that effectively. They tried to play him, on the wing. I thought he was more effective there. He's a really impactful defender. Honestly, the guy that it kind of reminded me of, and this is going to sound like a shot, this guy just like didn't work out. Remind me of Damian Inglis, the guy that the Bucks drafted very early in the 2nd round, maybe 8 years ago, something like that. similar frame, a little bit more athletic and a little bit more fluid though than Inglis. It's just that he's very raw, and it's going to be like a real project to me. But a project worth investing in the top 40 or so. He's also considering college as well. So we'll see if he ends up deciding to go to college. I'd imagine that if he's a first round pick and gets a guarantee, he'll stay in. If he doesn't, he will go to the end, or he will go to college. On the U.S. team, well, I guess like, is there anybody else in the world team? Look, Taj Ariza, we'll see what it is. Just very young right now. Was the youngest player on either team. Probably just wasn't quite there consistently, but the flashes looked great. There were moments where he was incredibly active and engaged on the court. I really liked him. I kind of mentioned Markovic. Markovic is the other guy that's draft eligible this year that people were excited to see. Just didn't really have a chance to guard. It felt like, and that was against like the world guys in practice, and against, like, we saw them scrimmage a team that had like Malik Thomas and a couple other like high level recruits, Mosia going to Georgia Tech. Just didn't really have a chance to stay in front. I felt like that was the problem. Yeah, it was not the best world roster. So like, truly just shout out to Marshall Cho, like getting those guys in position to play. Dash Daniels did not play, he got hurt, I think, like before we got there, at least practicing. So he was unable to play. They added Sean Abayev to the roster. Late arrival, always going to be hard. Omer Mayer is a guy that I really like out of Israel, guy that he's just a tough physical guard at 6'4", can play a little bit of point, can play a little two guard, impressive player. He's going to go to college, it seems like. Potential second round pick down the road. I like him a little bit more than I liked the Israeli guard Yam Madar that the Celtics picked, maybe 3 years ago. Just a little bit better of a player to me, a little bit bigger, a little bit stronger. I did not. Kai and Anthony, I think, just didn't look great this week in practice. Not a statement on him necessarily. Ryba had his moments, was really up and down defensively, was really up and down with his touch around the basket, but he's enormous. He has a low center of gravity for being that big, so I like him. And then the U.S. team, obviously, is the other group here, and probably the one that people want to hear most about. I thought that it was a ridiculously impressive week from Cam Boozer. He just makes the right decision every time he touches the ball. Obviously showed out in the game. I think he had like 25, 15 and like 5 or something like that. He was awesome. I thought his brother Caden was super impressive. I think Caden's the guy that has changed my opinion most of him over the last 6 months. I didn't really like him. I thought he was a little bit overhyped and overrated because of being Cam's brother and getting to play with Cam early in his high school career. But over the course of this last 6 months, I think he's really come into his own. He's going to be an awesome player at Duke. Like day one, he's going to be an awesome basketball player at Duke. I thought that it was a poor week from AJ Debinsa. I will just say that. He was great in the game, and I do want to call out the fact that when the lights came on, he clearly showed out. I don't know if you've watched the game yet or not, Bryce. It's worth watching.
I haven't yet, no.
Yeah. He was the guy that like consistently felt like he could score. It was a very Andrew Wiggins-y week from AJ Debinsa, where you kept wanting more from him. You kept wanting him to just take over the game athletically, take over the, moments where they played athletically, because he is so much more gifted than all of these other dudes in that respect. He has long strides. He gets to the rim. Like, he draws fouls. He has a nice little mid-range game, but his shot is very flat. So I worry about that a little bit off the catch. And he just kind of went invisible. Like, and maybe it's the travel where he's been moving around a lot. And maybe he just like was at Hoop Summit in practices and figured, whatever, I'll just show up for the game. Totally his prerogative. I've seen better versions of AJ Debinsa than what we saw this week, I guess. I don't know how you feel about Debinsa, but yeah.
Yeah, I haven't dug into like, obviously I've watched Debinsa, I've watched the Boozer twins, multiple of the names you've mentioned. I haven't got into it as much throughout this season, just trying to keep up with all the NBA and the 2025 draft. I've just recently I'm getting close to all the guys I really wanted to get like second really good looks at from the 2025 class, at least till I know who's staying in and who's not. So the 2026 stuff is about to start in terms of watching those guys and really getting a feel for these incoming high school kids.
I think that for Debanza, BYU getting Rob Wright, is that done? Is that public? I've like been half paying attention.
I saw a tweet about yes, yeah. It was
like he's officially committed. It's not just like a rumor now, right?
Yeah, I don't think it was a rumor whenever I saw it.
Okay. So getting Rob Wright, I think, was enormous for BYU because Rob Wright's like a real point guard that will be able to help AJ get to his spots, right? Like that is going to be a huge help for him next year at BYU. If he didn't have that like great lead guard, I might have some worries. I think he's going to be, look, when I say Wiggins, I meant that like this week specifically, that's what it reminded me of. I've seen AJ Debanza play drastically better, and I think he's going to be better than Andrew Wiggins. Like, don't worry about that. But I just say this to say that like this week was not his most impressive week, basically.
Yeah,
and then
Gary Parrish had an article that on the 11th, so 2 days ago, commitment vaults BYU, and yeah. So he's committed.
Great.
Yeah.
Okay. Nate Ament was really impressive to me. This is another guy that I haven't loved typically when I've seen him previously. Nate Ament is like the 6'9", 6'10" scoring, shooting wing. Is that the way to put it, Bryce?
Yeah.
Yeah. Like impressive frame in terms of length, exceptionally fluid. You just watch the way he moves. It's like totally different. He played really well throughout the course of the week. Didn't play super well in the game. That's not really his game yet because he's not a great guy to take somebody off the bounce and like be able to create his own. But if he was to go to Duke next year and play with the Boozers and some of those other guys, I think that would be the best decision for him. I think that getting him on the court and getting him into like positive situations would be really, really kind of helpful for me to see him continue to grow as a player.
Yeah, he's an interesting player. He is one that I've watched, and like again, I'm excited to go back and kind of watch these guys a little bit closer throughout their senior years of high school and get my notes on them going into their freshman year of college. But he's one that I've had people talk to me about, and I've actually watched a little bit of film on.
Yeah, I thought Nick Hamenia was quite good. The kid going to Duke, shooter, a little bit more than that, like can dribble, can pass, knows how to play the game. Impressive week for him. And I thought Michael Brown was the best point guard there on either team. I thought he was freaking awesome this week. He had the Friday practice, particularly, he was the best player on the court. I thought he just completely took over and was super, super impressive the entire game, the entire day. Was a little bit up and down throughout. I thought he was impressive in the scrimmage as well, but like a little bit up and down, but was probably the most impressive point guard I saw and looks like a top 10 pick next year to me.
Oh, wow. Nice.
Yeah. And I was with you. Like I'm not a huge A-Cuff guy. Like Caden Boozer, as I said previously, like I'd had questions about previously, but yeah, it was an interesting few days of practice for sure to see. Okay. That's all we got. Bryce, do you want to tell the people where they can find your work? Tell the people what's going on as we head toward a Pistons playoff extravaganza.
At Motor City Hoops on Twitter, on Blue Sky, motorcityhoops.substack.com. If you want any Pistons versus Knicks NBA playoff coverage, we'll have a lot of stuff over there, written stuff, my game notes, analysis, video stuff, all of that. So if you are a Pistons fan that's not subscribed or a Knicks fan that wants to check that out, you don't have to subscribe. Just check out the articles after the fact, or an NBA fan that wants to keep track of that series. We'll have it on lockdown over there. The Pistons Pulse podcast, if you want to get that. I know we're planning on have some Knicks content creators, maybe even beat writers over there to go throughout that series. GMAC will be joining the Pistons Pulse here in a week or so. Otherwise, the Game Theory podcast with the Sam Vecenie.
Go to The Athletic. Keep me employed over there. I will have something coming probably later this week on I would guess the NBA draft. Actually, no, because I'm on the road. It might be next week at this point still, whenever I write some draft stuff. We're getting through NBA draft guide. We're rolling through. I'm through like 70,000 words, as I announced on the Kyle Mann show. Go listen to Kyle Mann's podcast. We had a fun time recording that. What is it? It's I think the Ringer NBA draft shows might be what it's called at this point. Go subscribe to this channel. Go to the YouTube channel. Hit the subscribe button. Go to the Spotify, Apple, whatever you have. Hit the like button. Hit the subscribe button. Rate 5 stars. Do whatever you can to support the show. We will be back throughout the playoffs with a ton more, but more than that, we will be back over the next 2 days doing awards. Until next time, we'll talk soon. Bye.